Exactly.
All right, it's 6:24. I'll call Committee of the Whole to order for September the 25th, 2017. First item up is derelict buildings tipping fee incentive.
So the town of the Paws have been looking at various incentives in which we would hope would provide some initiatives for economic growth in the community. The City of Dauphin, this is kind of following suit with the City of Dauphin, they've brought forward a program whereby if you are going to be demolishing an old building and replacing it within 2 years with another building, that they would give you 50% of your fee that you've paid for, I'll just say dump fees, that's what everybody understands, for your dump fees, and they would reimburse you 50% if you're going to be building in the next 2 years. When I spoke to them, they said, you know what, sadly it's not utilized well, but I think this is a good opportunity for us to kind of jump on board, and I'm recommending that we consider the same such program. And what it is, it leaves the onus completely onto the person that's doing the construction or the demolition. It's not like we're going to be tagging around after them. The only thing I would do differently, and I know the City of Dauphin says that they look at after the building is built, they said what they would have recommended is to put a deadline on the application to come back in. So once you have that building built, after the 2 years, that you have like say 3 months to come in and get your money back. It leaves us not having to chase the people. The people come in, if you're beyond the 3 months or whatever, you don't get your money back. Another thing is, we talked about that maybe this does not cover buildings that are covered through insurance. If insurance is already paying the tab for the demolition, then we didn't believe as management or as staff that we should be reimbursing people back on that. So my recommendation would be to bring this policy forward at the next meeting for approval.
Comments?
Could this be something that we even tie into like our existing development incentive for when people are building?
I think with any of that you can.
Yeah. Just because maybe
Yeah.
people will utilize it more if it's tied in. If people are building or tearing something down and building something new, that's probably something that they're going to be taking advantage of anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Councilor Ron.
I was just wondering, it's in relationship to this, how does this fit into with other incentives we have, or do we only have the one we passed by bylaw, and then this would be an additional one?
Correct.
And I guess my thinking is there, while we're looking at this, would this be a good time to look at it more broadly in terms of, is there any other kind of incentive that may work, and then we could put it all through at once and then say, okay, let's look at it again in 5 years and see how it's working, rather than shortly, or be changing it next year sort of thing. I'd like to see it get settled, get in there and see how it works.
Right?
If I may comment on that, I know some of the other incentives that we had been talking about that we haven't really come up with the total plan yet would not include stuff like this. If we're looking at reduced costs in other areas, say, lot sales or any of that, those are things that would not be part of this. We always have our little rules and regulations on double or triple incentives on one development, but that is something council can consider. I would personally, I know we're looking at the long term, but I would personally like to see this one go through while the season is somewhat still there, and that in the springtime we can move forward with this, but I don't think that's a bad idea to look at what other things we could package together.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Check.
So I was just looking at the Dauphin brochure, and it says to rebate them back 50% by check. Is that what we'd be doing as well? or-
Yeah, what happens is the person that's doing the demolition, they would be paying for the work all up front. Every time they go to the dump, they would be charged with paying it. And then when they do come back to us, we would reimburse them 50% of the fees that they paid. It's not a charge system, it's not,
Yeah.
They would keep like their receipts. to
yeah,
show
they
what
have to have the
paid.
receipts, they come in and they show it to us, we do not chase them.
Oh, they keep the receipts as
They
well?
keep the
Okay.
receipts, yeah, so that when they're done, within the 3 months or whatever limit, they would come back to us, submit the receipts for it, we would cut a check to them for 50% of the fees.
Anybody else? Bring that forward then for a resolution. Good job on that. 1.2, lagoon upgrade open house.
So as everybody at the council table is aware, the lagoon upgrade is going to be in excess of some big money here. We're looking at boring approximately 6 million if we're looking at moving forward with the entire project. So what we want to do is hold an open house for all the public to be aware. We're looking at that open house to be on October 25th at 7 p.m. So that'll be advertised, but this was to make sure this worked with council. I think this is a step in the right direction so that the public is well aware of what is going on now that we have this plan and now we know what's going on, that we share it with the public. So it's not going to be any surprises. This is going to be a very costly project and it's going to have an impact on the community.
Any issues?
It's a Wednesday.
Yeah.
The only comment that I had, Randy, was that it speaks to that committee of consultants, whatever, meeting with council at 6 p.m.
Yep.
prior to, and that's great because, obviously, Water Services Board and J.R. Cousins aren't going to be here in advance of that, but it might be nice, I call it 2 weeks in advance or something, to get kind of a mini presentation or a pre-presentation, even if it's, from Sam and Chris or the engineering department, just so that if there's a really big question mark, we might be able to flag it before, right before the public house comes, just from our side, for clarity's sake, if that's a possibility.
So maybe have them come to the October, the first committee of the
council meeting
whole.
in front of it, or committee of the whole, or whatever, just to get a closed notes version.
Good idea.
It's gonna go ahead at the open house.
Anybody else? Okay, let's put that out there then. Request from the news, let's see, what are we talking about? Outdoor rink money, sorry, request from the superintendent.
So if you recall, last year there was some money left over from the recreation fields and stuff like that was going to be moved towards, sorry?
Fencing.
Yeah, it was going to be used towards the, going to be used towards the rink. This was paid in at a buy-pole, $22,000 was spoken for reimbursement through there. There's no more money in the buy-pole right now, but I understand that they're looking for our dedication to the $22,000 for this rink. I think at this point, we've promised the money, we need to find it somewhere. I know
I agree.
we do have some major issues with our rink right now, and I'm really kind of concerned over the financial burden that's going to have first. I just want council to be aware of that.
Councillor Commodore.
I would think that maybe they would understand, since we have such there may be a high bill at the arena, maybe that would be a priority.
Just until we know what that bill is.
Yeah, I'm a little leery on that.
Made the commitment, so go forward until we know what.
I agree.
Randy,
happens there, then we'll go there.
What are the chances that that expenditure or commitment is required in 2016 versus 2017 for the reality is the outdoor rink, it's a late November, December project. Are they going to be, if they require us to commit, are we looking at 2016 fiscal year or 2017 fiscal year, I guess is the question, or 2017 fiscal year or 2018 fiscal year?
I would think it'd be 2017, that's,
Maybe that's when the
I'll
work's
ask
gonna
the
happen,
question.
but I'm wondering when's the bill gonna come?
yeah,
And if the bill's not coming to 2017 or 2018, then you're in
you're losing a year,
I
man.
know, it's,
I will ask the question for sure.
because that would have some bearing.
Benjamin, you may be able to provide.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, can you shed any light on that?
You can. We had a meeting with Rotary and Mr. Cogan and Rick Hubbs, I believe his name is.
Yeah.
And they talked to the effect of deciding either a cement or asphalt pad. I believe they come to terms with an asphalt pad, it's cheaper. And they're, Sam and Chris pulling in the numbers for them. Yeah, they are short for the money they need to build the rink in its entirety. They were hoping to have a pad down. These were conversations at the meeting.
This year?
This year,
Yeah.
and I do believe they have the money for the pad. But their concern was, like the town had said, the baseball fence money was coming their way. They wanted to know if it was there or not. Will they be putting in an entire rink in its entirety this year? No way. I don't believe they'll, even to get the people involved, and even the money that they need, all parties have to put in the kitty type thing.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll be at a full rink, but could they have a pad this year? I believe they could. I believe they could have a pad, and the contractor that they discussed with in the city said with an asphalt pad, they can put a rink on the pad, asphalt pad, like even if it was there first or second.
Yeah. Councillor Rock, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned that at some point, it sounds like we're being told that the council committed BIPOL money to this project, and
I believe it was money that wasn't spent on baseball fences. There was baseball fence money that
Okay.
we put in, and we had to save money.
Yeah, so the money that wasn't spent on the fence would then go towards the outdoor rink project. Not specifically to fencing, but to the outdoor rink project.
Okay, so that dollar was transferred to an account for that purpose?
Not yet, no.
Or,
I don't
It
think, I
should have
shouldn't
been
say,
carried forward
Yeah.
after the last budget from last year. It should have been carried forward, but it wasn't in the budget this year. It wasn't carried forward. What happens at year end when we have tagged stuff for work, like at the end of the year, if we have that leftover money, we usually bring it forward and tag it so that it comes forward in the 2017, and that didn't happen in this budget. So now we're gonna have to look at what it went into surplus, right? So now you'd either be looking out of surplus, or if it went into a reserve fund, to bring it back.
so the notion that it was to be set aside for that actually was never a resolution of council at all?
No.
No.
Or
Yeah, it
anything? So
was.
there-
Well,
What's
passed
saying
a
we would spend it, but we
resolution.
didn't bring it forward to
Yeah.
the 2017.
Yeah,
We
so I
we
guess-
passed a resolution last year saying
Yeah.
that we would allocate the $22,000 left over from getting the fences done, which originally came from the bi-pole money,
Right.
to the outdoor rink. But I seem to remember us allocating dollars towards a gravel base or something, did we not?
Yeah, last year we did.
That was-
Oh, it was
Yeah.
additional?
that's a
Yeah.
different one than this one.
It was because we had additional money left over, like from that, they decided to carry it forward. And we said, because we have this, and it was kind of the next phase, that we would give them the 22.
So we committed by resolution, but we
Yeah.
didn't carry it through, even though
You
we.
didn't carry it forward in the
Right.
next year to use for it, correct? So I have Graham actually going through our accounts to see where we can get this from.
Yeah, I guess going forward, if we didn't carry it through, at that point, we needed to say, well, let's rescind that plan because we're not carrying it forward to do it. And I guess what I'm thinking, because we're so close to budget time, sometimes when you do the evolution through budget, an activity in a plan of the past gets lost in other demands and needs on our dollars and resources, and then you start to kind of like we think we have to do it now because we made a promise, but when we did the budget process last year, we decided, well, that promise couldn't be met. So now in midterm,
I think the issue is that we didn't decide that that promise couldn't be met, it simply got missed. We didn't discuss it at all. We committed it in 2016 through resolution, we did our 2017 budget, it wasn't even a discussion point. Not because we said, let's not even discuss it, it's off the table, just because it never got raised. It was something that had been flagged for a carry, or should have been flagged for a rollover into the 2017 plan that didn't.
And let's just wait 2 weeks and find out what Graham finds out. Okay? I just think, but I
So my
think we should look at moving forward with it, but let's,
So my action on this, if I can confirm, so we're looking at going ahead with the 22,000, where are we gonna get it from? Because we've committed to it,
Right.
and do they need it for this year, or can it wait till 2018,
right,
the actual expenditure?
right.
Yep.
That's how I see it.
Is there anything else you need me to look up on that?
Well, but one thing to note, and for Graham as well, based on what was provided by the previous CFO that we're getting to, the accommodation tax, which goes to the Community Enhancement Fund, is 94% there as of the end of July. So that means our budget amount of $100,000 is almost reached halfway through the year. Right? So
Yep.
we're ahead of the schedule, we're looking at other places, whether it's for issues you have at the arena or...
I'd prefer to wait to see where
So,
Graham
no,
finds
exactly,
all of the
exactly,
finances
sure.
with that, because we've been
Yeah.
taking out of there, and we need to know a perfect balance on what we've committed before moving forward.
Okay. All right, anything else on that? Okay, walking path survey.
If you recall, we did have citizens that came to the town council and made a presentation about their concerns with the walking paths and closures of them. There were some surveys sent out of the 117 surveys sent out. They only received 40 responses back. One agreed for a temporary closure, 15 said don't close them, 24 said close it. Sam and Chris want to speak with the RCMP before proceeding. There's been some concern raised that if we close these areas, they were included as part of the design of the subdivisions in that area, and they are a little concerned of what's gonna happen, are we gonna be pushing this traffic into another area? So Sam and Chris want to ask for a little bit of an extension to responding to this until they get more information from the RCMP. Plus, we also want to get some costs and some other options for the closures. Because in some of these areas, it's going to be very difficult to close because people will just walk around them, right? And I get it and I understand, and we are empathetic to the fact that there are issues here, but at what expense? We need to be aware of those expenses also. So it's more of an information that we're still gathering more.
Any comment?
That sounds like a reasonable plan to me. Legitimate questions regarding safety and legitimate questions regarding cost.
Yeah, I think one of the key things about it is if you create this private area on a pathway between houses with blocked at both ends, you have a perfect gathering place for situations of things you may not wish to have there, where now it's a walkthrough that people use, and maybe they help to move people along. So how it's done and whatnot is going to be critical beyond just the cost. It's how effective is it going to be?
I think the people that are living next door to those things, though, would say that actually, if it's closed at both ends and people chose to go in there to do whatever they're gonna do, then they've just made it awfully hard to get away quickly if the police show up. Whereas right now, those people are gathering there, doing whatever they're doing, the police are showing up on one end and they're gone out the other. Or by the time the police shut up, they've moved on because they know they can see the police coming.
I believe a couple of years ago, we also closed a walking path or a walking area on Traeger, and it was just like fence went up, neighbors split, and fence went down, it was all good, so. Yeah.
Just one other question. The section closest to Cathedral, has anything been able to be done with regard to the overhanging trees from the people that live there and whatnot, so that it's not a canopy and a tunnel effect, and that the light can actually shine and that sort of thing?
I know our maintenance department has been very active in clearing some of the areas along the walking path. And I also know that the safety officer was sending letters to people also saying clean up your properties.
Oh, okay, good.
Are you talking about the actual walking path that comes out onto?
Yeah, those two you're talking about, there's the one closest to the playground, and it's
Right.
not too bad, but the other one, it's a tunnel.
Yeah.
And it actually shelters the light from actually shining in, which is quite different than the other one on that coming from Traeger, which is much more open and lit, so it seemed to have less problem.
2 weeks, leaves will be gone. Problem solved. Okay, we'll wait to get more information then. Air Cadets,
Chad,
sorry,
there.
I'm sorry, Chad.
I know we originally talked about doing some type of public hearing or letting the public come in and say their piece. Is that something that we're still talking about doing, or?
I can ask them.
Well,
Yeah.
I think they want, in saying that, if I may interject here, we encourage the public, this is making it difficult sometimes when we're looking at stats. We depend a lot on statistical information, and people are frustrated and they forget to contact the RCMP. It's frustrating for us because we also depend on those stats when it comes to stuff like this. So I would encourage, if anyone is having the problems, contact the RCMP. It really helps us with numbers and it helps us making informed decisions.
And people who live 2 blocks away from where we're talking about have a much different opinion than those who have fences bordering it and are constantly painting.
However, in answer to that, I will ask them if that's something they're still wanting to
Yeah.
continue.
Yeah.
Because I know at one point, that's why they thought, okay, the survey went out to this many people, so maybe they've discussed and believe that it maybe wouldn't be necessary. I can ask them.
Okay, good. All right, Air Cadets, variation for a sea can.
Sorry, just one moment,
Yeah.
please. We received a letter from the Air Cadets requesting consideration to put a sea can next to the existing one owned by the Legion for storage of their materials. A couple years back when we looked into this, we realized that that sea can was kind of slipped through and error on our part and actually isn't permitted. There's a few of them around town. Since this all happened, we've denied anybody bringing a sea can in. In speaking with planning branch, they've also said they wouldn't recommend having any sea cans in the facility. Before they go and apply for the permit for it or apply for the variations, because it's also gonna affect parking, parking's also gonna have to be reduced. I would suggest we tell them that sea cans would not be permitted. I think we'd be very open with it. They can apply for the variation to reduce the number of, we can't stop that, like that's fine. But as far as the sea can, right now they're not permitted in our zoning.
I was gonna say, just for clarification's sake, it's not that sea cans aren't permitted in town, period. It's that they have to be in the appropriately zoned property. There are some sea cans in town that are in appropriate places by
Yep.
zoning, by zone definition.
Sadly, they're existing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to make sure, because it kind of sounded like sea cans are just not allowed in town.
Yeah.
They're not,
that's-
they're actually not.
The ones that are in place right now are
So there's
existing.
no zoning element within our boundaries
None.
that allows for a sea can, period?
Nope.
Not even in the light industrial area?
Nope,
Why is that?
it's not our zoning, I know.
When the
I know,
zoning
but why-
bylaw was written,
When it was
sea
written, there was
cans
probably no
didn't-
such thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's an interesting point, because there are a couple that are in areas that might be deemed to be appropriate, depending on the nature of the, zoning that's there.
And I think that's how this got through, Andrew, is because we considered an accessory, like shed, like an accessory
Yeah.
building.
Yeah,
And that's, I think, how this happened in the first place.
time to update a bylaw.
We actually are.
Okay, anything else? Okay, Sam Muller Museum Board appointment.
So we have a recommendation from the Sam Muller Museum Board to appoint Trent Allen to the Sam Muller Museum Board until December 31st, 2018. So that would require a resolution.
Do we really want that, though?
Yeah.
Yeah, can we see a resume and some references?
I mean,
That's, you know.
that's a pretty good board, do we, you
Yeah,
know?
do we want to dilute it?
Way to step up, Trent.
Yeah, is there a board you're not on these days?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you play your cards right, you just might get lucky.
Okay, water to taxes.
So in accordance with the Municipal Act, we have some outstanding utility accounts that we are able to add to taxes. So we would require a resolution to add utilities to taxes. The amount of the utilities to be added to taxes is in the amount of $41,483.81. We've, in the last couple of years, been really on the ball with collecting money for the outstanding utility through the taxes.
I don't need to know who, not important, but there's two in there. Like, one is like over $1,400, one is over $2,000. How does water bills like that get
There's a few of them that are quite high
out
like
of
that.
hand? I can see $100, $200, but,
Well, and these are basically balances over 91 days. So that's pretty much 3 months.
okay. Everybody okay with this? Okay, we have a whole whack of financial statements.
Reality in here, it's hard to understand these, and I'm gonna be very blunt with it. Graham is getting a handle on adding in the 2017 actual budget. We've gone through and we're kinda looking where we know we're at par. There's nothing that jumps out and says, oh my goodness, we are under, because this is only to July, right? So that is one of the priorities that Graham has, is to add the 2017 actuals into the budget so we have better comparisons. But there is nothing, like I said, that jumps out. This is mid-year, and a lot of our expenses didn't really start until August, when you look at some of our larger expenses.
Okay.
So
So we-
sorry, so just so I'm understanding, he's gonna carry the actuals from these reports and put it back? in the
Yeah, we're
same
gonna be,
format as the
yes,
budget? Okay.
yes.
All right, just-
Because this is a different format than
Yeah,
what we've
no,
seen in
for
the
sure.
past.
Yeah.
And I think all of us can pretty much say we like the older format. So again, we'd be looking at a resolution to July.
Okay. 4.4, CDC audited financial statements.
What we require, like the other organizations that we have, is a resolution accepting the Community Development Corporation financial statements for the period ending March 31st, 2016. As you can see, there was not a whole lot of transaction in here, and that's because it was pretty quiet up until that point.
Fairly dormant. Any comments? Okay, Jetstone tender.
Each year we put out a tender for Jetstone as it relates to use at the Paw Airport. We only received one bid. We would require a resolution for approximately 200 cubic yards of Jetstone in the amount of $39,650, and the successful bid was Trakuski Contracting.
Any comments? Okay, move forward for resolution. Recommendation of council from the Paul Library, Regional Library.
Councillor Forward, do you want to carry this
Yeah,
one as
sure.
you brought it forward?
So at the last library board meeting, one of the topics of discussion there, and it's been a topic here at our table, has been the library building itself. It has issues. And so, the library board is wanting to make sure it is a responsible and diligent user of the funds that we pass on to them. And they want to be able to plan strategically for the next 3 to 5 years. And they asked whether or not we could provide them with some concrete direction around what our limits are with respect to the building, I guess is the best way to put it. So I told them that we would bring that up here. Didn't know that we would necessarily have an answer for them out of this meeting, but maybe we should talk a little bit about what our expectations are around capital investment in an asset that is more of a liability than an asset.
Right.
And I think that's the fly in the ointment, right? As it stands operationally, it's not such a bad building. It's that when you look at trying to make that thing a better building, or even a building that meets code or from a health and safety standpoint is appropriate, then it turns into a different discussion. Now you're talking about investing in something that you're not sure you should invest in anymore. And it's not a reflection of the library, of the people, the board and the administrators of the library, it's just a reflection of the asset itself. It's something, in light of the budget coming up as well, it's definitely something that we should consider, and it would be great if we could provide them with a concrete set of operating criteria, for lack of a better term. If it is the case that we say, look, operations and maintenance wise, we have no problem with the building remaining as it is, and remaining as a library, but when it comes down to it, if there's an investment that's required that's beyond 5% of the net worth of the building, or whatever that number is, or however we choose to gauge that, then it's not going to happen. Then at least they know what they should be planning for.
I don't know how we answer that tonight, so.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's probably a good discussion for, or a recommendation from
Yeah.
maintenance.
There's kind of a few issues, and I think you and I had kind of briefly talked about it, Andrew, and this kind of moves in with the next one.
Yeah.
Is to have a discussion. I think at this table, we have had the discussion saying there is a lot of capital that needs to go into that building to make it decent, and that's just something we can't afford at this time. However, we need to maybe be looking at partnering and into your next issue sheet about our agreements. Maybe we need to start chatting with the R. McKelsey and
Yeah.
seeing
well,
where to
and
proceed.
Through that conversation, it came to light that, we had signed a joint funding agreement with the RM in November of last year. That's an agreement that's almost 20 years old. We just continue to extend and fund it. And, we signed it, and then, some changes came at budget time, and it ended up that we pulled back 10% of our funding for the library, and the RM actually ended up topping that up in the end. And so that doesn't reflect actually what the agreement is that we signed. It's an agreement with the RM, not an agreement with the library, but it's about funding of the library. So it would be real appropriate probably to set up a meeting with the RM. It doesn't necessarily have to be all of both councils. Maybe it can just be there's a representative from the RM sitting on the library board as well. It would be useful maybe if the Reeve and the mayor, some administrative people are around to talk about what are realistic expectations with that building, and then with respect to funding for it's really about funding for the building. It's not about funding for services. It's really about funding for the building. So maybe the action item out of that, Randy, would be to look to set up a meeting next week or two. It'd be great to have that discussion in advance of budget for sure.
Okay, anybody else on that? Okay, I take it we've looked after both of that then, the Army agreement and the Paul Library?
Kind of, it's,
Yeah, I
we
think
talked
so.
about having an open
Gonna have to have
discussion
more
as what we
meetings.
can do.
Yeah, I think so.
But
The library is looking for some feedback.
Yeah.
They want to know kind of what they should be planning for, and that's great. It's great that the board is thinking along those lines.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
You wanna go?
I guess in saying that, we did talk about this a year ago, saying we can't afford to keep with this building the way it is. So that's the decision we kind of need to hit at. I think letting them believe that this can continue in the next 5 years.
Well, this is what.
We have to have the
they're saying,
conversations.
If you guys are serious about this building being closed, can you give us a date, if that's actually where we're at? And if it's a date, then we need to know it so that we can strategize about what it looks like and recognize that that could mean that if there is no space, that, you know, that something like not having a library would exist.
Yeah.
Or that it moves into something very small that's capable of handling the costs. And I mean, so it's a large and complex discussion, because I mean, from a financial standpoint, you can look at moving costs from capital over to operational. You could actually see the amount that gets funded to them to operate increase as a result of moving out of that building. But that could be offset against capital costs that you don't have to make, so it's not costs that you've realized. So it's
There's
not-
a lot of issues out
There's a
there.
lot of complexities to the evaluation of whether or not you're quote-unquote saving money. And it's larger, you have to review more than just the next 3 months of expenses or the next year of expenses. You have to look at the next 10 years of expenses for running a library. So and it needs to be a discussion, a regional discussion.
And there is maybe a possibility that if it's turned over to them, maybe they can get grant monies to do those things.
It's a possibility for sure.
Everything
There's something to look into.
I will say
No, oh,
that
sorry.
I have learned from sitting on the library board that typically libraries are not run independent of municipalities. It's just not how they're structured.
They're not a private enterprise
The
thing.
public library service is not, it's just not quite the same animal as a museum or the recycle center. That's not to say that it couldn't happen, but I have been learning since I've been sitting at that table that it is a slightly different setup.
Alan?
I was just gonna say, maybe we'll meet with the RM first,
Yeah.
and discuss it, and then go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since they're a major funder.
Okay. Sorry,
Question, does the library board have a building replacement committee or something that's working on their potential reality, that they can't be there forever? It may not last forever, so I'm just wondering if they're doing it because it is a board. It has some responsibility for its own future.
Sure. I think they have started somewhat of a building replacement reserve fund, but I mean, the reality is that it hasn't really been necessary because they operate in a town building.
Yeah.
So until this discussion point came forward last year, where it was a legitimate consideration that that building might go away, there hasn't really been a need for the board to be thinking in that direction.
It's a very old building.
It's troublesome. I mean, I didn't realize the extent to which it's troublesome until I've been sitting there.
Okay, payroll and accounts.
We would require a resolution for the next council meeting as it relates to funds for pay period 19 in the amount of $115,380.30, general checks in the amount of $197,182.71, and electronic funds transfer payments in the amount of $93,393.10, for a total of $405,956.11. One of the biggest billings you're going to see is almost $95,000, and that's for airport fuel.
That's a great bill to have.
It is.
That is. Have to sell a lot of fuel to have to buy that much. Okay, personnel, 5.1.
So the next thing we have here is a requirement to have a formal resolution to hire Graham Keller as the position of controller for the town of The Paw. Moving forward, I'm going to be bringing a resolution to council. When we make these, it's basically management that hires these people. As long as we fall within the guidelines that have already been established by council, rather than appointing this by resolution, we could do the resolutions, or do the offers right instantly. He's already started for a week.
Yeah.
So we'd like to bring that policy up to what our practices really should be. So I'd like to bring back a policy for the next committee of the whole meeting.
I can tell you that when I started here as Economic Development Officer, it was 5 weeks before there was a resolution to council. It was the worst 5 weeks of my life, so I think this is a good idea.
We've even changed our practice because before, until that resolution was passed, you weren't even allowed to come work. 10 years ago.
Okay, motion to adjourn. Or to move in camera, sorry. Done.
Motion to move in camera to discuss business requiring our attention.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.